I'd like to talk now about Python lists. Well, many programming languages has data structures which are called arrays. For example, those of you who are familiar with C++, well, hopefully you remember what arrays are. So lists in Python are objects somewhat similar to C++ arrays. So they represent a collection of certain items. The items are put in a certain order. The items can be repeated, and also, what's important that in addition to lists, there will be many other types of objects in Python which can store collections of variables such as tuple, set, and dictionary, and we'll talk more about them later. But now let me introduce lists. So if I want to introduce lists, let's say, I introduce a new variable, my list, and put here something. A, B, C. Alright, so now if I call my list, it will print this object, which has 3 strings in it, A, B, and C, and it's enclosed in the square brackets. So you can call certain elements in the list. For example, that's if I say my list is 0, I will get the first element of the list. This is very similar to strings. Except for here, it's indeed, each element in my list is a character, but it doesn't have to. For example, I can introduce another variable, for example, list1, where each element would be, not a single character, but a long string, right? So, and so on. So now if I call list1, 0, my first element would be the entire word, which is stored here in the first position. Similar, I can say list 1 minus 1 and call the last element in the list, or I can do list 1, let's say, second. That's second means third, because we numerate them starting from 0, and that's why it gives me the same element. So there are many operations you can do with lists. For example, you can append elements to your list. So let me get back to my initial list, the one which is simpler, and say my list append, and let me append letter D to it. Okay, so now my list is A, B, C, D. You can also, what's important, you can append elements of different nature to the list, and this is what makes it very different compared to arrays in C++, where all the elements have to be of the same type. So if I want to append A, B, C, D, the next logical thing would be E, but let me append E to it. Alright, my list append, and instead of E in quotation marks, I will put just E as the name of the variable, which is this floating point number. And if I print now my list, by the way, I want to remind you, you can print also with a function print. Print my list, it prints me A, B, C, D characters, and E, which was a variable, it prints the value of this variable. Alright, you can change an element in the list also. So if I call a certain element, for example, my list, let's say I'll take the second from the end element, right? This will be what is letter D now, and say that I want it to be, let's say, some number, well, which you all hopefully recognize, and I do print list again, and well, you see this element is replaced by a different element. You can also insert into the list. So if I do my list insert, and I can tell it at which position I'm inserting. Let's say I'm inserting at the third position, and let me insert this number, for example. Oops. Oh, my bad. Oh, because I'm trying to call these the number of these element, but insert is a function, and the syntax is somewhat different. So I need to do insert instead of assigning it to it. I need to say insert then the position and then the value. All right, and now I print my list, and I get A, B, C. Well, you know what? I think, yeah. So these element which I inserted, and the remaining values. So let me insert something else. The position 2. I want to insert. Let's say 831, for example, and print my list again. So it is inserted in the position 1 before the element C, right? It adds one more element to the list, which is 831. Similar to strings, we can check if something is in our list. You can use the operator in, right? So for example, A in my list. Oh, it says true, yeah, because A is here indeed in my list. And let's see if D is in my list. Oops. Well, it's false because I replaced the D at this point with the value of the pi constant. All right. Other thing which you can do here, you can find the index of a certain element. So, for example, my list dot index, and then the value I want to find the index for. So this is the 0th element, or the first element of my list. If I do the same with D, it will give me an error because D is not in the list. So I can remove stuff from the list if I don't. If I want to get rid of some of the things, I can say delete my list, and let's say which one. I don't want the Avogadro number. It's too big. So I want to remove 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, the 4th element, right? And if I print my list again, I won't have Avogadro in it anymore. I could use the previous functions to do that. For example, if I don't want to count where am I at, I want to get the index. My index is my list dot index, and let's say I want to find where my pi number is. So my index is 4, and now I can say delete my list, my index. Yeah, well, functional call, of course, because I did need to use the curly brackets, I need to use the square brackets here. So, well, Python will always tell you if you're doing something wrong with the syntax. Alright, so I'm printing my list again and getting A, B, C, the gas constant and the E number, but the pi number is no longer there. So the next thing I can do, one more operation for deletion. So I can say my list remove, and instead of telling at which index I'm removing, but I can remove instead the actual value. So this, unlike the delete function, this doesn't need an index. This needs just the value. So I deleted my element C from the list. One very important type of lists we're going to introduce is the lists which are created by the function range. So I can create, let me call it my range. I can create, for example, a range of 5, and if I print this, well, it will just tell me range 0 to 5, but in fact what it is, it's a list which starts from 0 and ends at 4. So if I do my range 0, my range 1, my range 2, my range 3, and my range 4, these are all the elements in this list, and if I call my range 5, it will give me an error because it has only 5 elements which start from 0 and ends at 4. Well, you can introduce another type of range. You can introduce a range, for example, my range 2, oops, it won't swallow this bracket in the name of the variable. My range 2 would be range which, let's say, starts at 1, goes up to 15, and the step would be 2. So if I call my range 0, it will be 1, but the next element would be already 3 because I introduce a step here.